If you don't know who you really are, then you're not really going to be able to get to different places. Meaning, for so many of us, we have these things that we want to be doing. We want to be able to achieve certain achieve certain achievements in our life. There you go, Bennett. Great job. Right? We want to be able to do certain things in our lives. And what we have to realize is that if we aren't realistic with where we are today, then what's going to happen is that we're just going to keep missing the boat in terms of what is necessary. And for so many of us, we have this ability. We want to really be able to focus on so much of what's going on in our own personal lives, and we want to be optimistic, and we want to be so positive in terms of like what's the reality. But on the other hand, like we have to be realistic with what's going on, where we are, what skills we have. And this was something that was very difficult for me, because for me early on, I started getting into personal development, and it was all like very motivational. It was very, very exciting. And for me, like it felt amazing, first of all. Like it was really, really good. But on the other hand, like I kept doing certain things. I kept putting myself out there, and I didn't realize that there's so much skill that needs to be learning. And for so many people, they have so much of this hopium that they're just consuming, that they just think they could just be so successful just because like they want to become successful. And it really doesn't work like that. And it took me way too long. And hopefully I could share with you some ideas that certain things that have happened to me personally that I'll be able to just give you a little bit of a shortcut, even though there are really no shortcuts, but give you a shortcut, I guess, in your mind, in your framework, to allow you to make sure that you could do those things. Because if you don't know where you are, you're not going to be able to know where you're going. And that's one of the first things. If I told you to meet me somewhere, if I told you to meet me in LA, and you're not really sure where you are right now, then how are you supposed to get to LA? Right? You can't really get there. And it's the first process, one of the first steps, I would say, of goal setting. And if we could just start to figure out, okay, what's happening, and a lot of times it's interesting because on the one hand, and within goal setting itself, what we want to try to do is we want to work ourselves backwards. We want to be able to take the goal from where it is that we want to be and reverse engineer it backwards. Again, I always give the example that if you want to be able to complete a maze, if you have like one of these mazes on a piece of paper and you want to be able to just do the maze, so how are you supposed to do the maze? So a great way to cheat against doing the maze is just to go backwards, to go through the end of the maze, and you'll be able to find for the start. And then all of a sudden, like, okay, then you can do the actual maze. And for many of us, we have to realize that, yes, working out the strategic parts about moving backwards is something that we have to be doing. But I think for so many people, when they're working back the maze, they don't ever finish the maze. They don't go through the start. They get very close to it. And for people who are looking to get moving, they're just oblivious to really what it is that they're doing, their skill set. And it doesn't mean we have to be down. It doesn't mean we can't be positive. But on the other hand, we have to just continuously get that feedback. And that's we'll start there, because that's probably the biggest thing that happens. For so many people, they want to be able to start. They want to be able to take that action. But then all that happens is that they don't end up learning. They don't end up realizing, okay, I'm not there. I thought I was going to be able to do X, Y, Z, and now I can't even get to X. Like, what am I supposed to do next? I'm just bad, or they keep bashing themselves. So if you do take the approach of not really recognizing where you are, then you also have to be kind to yourself, because for so many people, because they're not kind to themselves, when they start to move forward and when they get that feedback that life's giving them, and a lot of times the feedback ain't so great, we have to recognize that is just feedback. What can we learn from this moment, and how can we tweak it to move forward? And it was so difficult for me to learn that, because my ego was just in the way, because I thought I knew everything. I thought I was capable of doing it. I thought I was able to run a 6-figure coaching business, right? I figured I'm already able to run a real estate company, and I was able to buy properties, and I bought 4 properties in my first year, and it was like so amazing. And then it's like all of a sudden, like, you end up losing money. Like, this isn't how it's supposed to go. Or like you end up going months without getting clients and coaching, and you're like, this is not great. This is not what I expected. And what's going on? This is so not me. But guess what? It was very much me, because I didn't realize that. And if we can start to realize that whatever's happening back to us, if we're not succeeding at something, that's just good feedback. And that's all it is. We cannot be judging ourselves. We have to be curious, because if we're not learning, if we're not changing our actions, then of course, we're just going to keep going. It's like you're playing like a video game. You're playing Mario, and you keep going forward, and there's like one of those areas that you could fall in, and then all of a sudden, like, you don't press the jump button and you fall in, and you're like, oh man, I can't believe I did that. And then you play the board again, and then you keep going and you fall down again. You're like, oh man, I can't believe I did that. And you keep getting frustrated, you keep falling in, and it's like, hello, if you're not going to change what you're doing, if you're not going to press that jump button, so then you're not going to be able to get there. And I think for so many people, that's how they live their lives. They're just going forward with what's happening in their lives. That All that they realize is that they have to be able to move forward and really take that action. So what's going on in your life? What is it that you can start to do to allow yourself to really make those things happen? So that's number one. The second thing that we have to realize when it comes to just knowing ourselves is what's like a practical way that we can know ourselves? What is something that we can start to do to really take advantage of understanding, like, who are we? What are we supposed to be doing? And this is like one of those things that I think journaling comes in play, because journaling is one of those things that you can actually look back and you can like really start to document your life. And it was interesting because I was recently listening to a podcast by Alex Hermosi, and he was talking about this idea of just learning about your past mistakes, and it's really the same idea. And if we can start to see what happened in our past, so now we can like listen to it in like current version of ourselves, then all of a sudden what that's going to happen is like we're going to be able to move forward and take that from us. So whether it's in an actual hardcore journal that I have right over here if you are watching the video, or if you are documenting it on a podcast like I'm doing over here, or a live, or whatever it might be, you have that ability to go back and to learn from it. And I think for lots of people, they go based on their memory. Like, how many of us say, oh, well, this thing we're going to remember, or like, you're going through something, you're like, oh, I'm going to like remember your phone number. And like, in the moment you remember it, then you like keep going. And then like, after an hour, you're like, wait a second, what was the phone number? But I really remembered it this time. I really knew I was going to really going to get it down. And what's interesting is that we're human and we forget things, and that's fine. But what we have to recognize is that if we can start to document ourselves, so we can start to put things in place, then all of a sudden, every time something happens, every time we get that feedback, we have now a place that we can go through it. And what's interesting is that for many people, it's not just the documenting. I think that's one level of it, but it's really going over that documents. It's seeing what was happening. And I think that is something that is so powerful for so many of us, because it's one thing writing it down, but then it's another thing, like at the end of the month, to go back and look at it. It's one thing to go back at the end of the year to say, hey, what are all these things that happen? What are all the lessons that I've learned? What are the themes that keep popping up that I really, really have to shift, and then I have to change? And if I don't change, guess what? Nothing different's going to happen. I'm going to continue living this life that I'm living. Because for so many people, the same life that they were living 2 years ago is the same life they're living right now. And it's going to be the same life they're living in 2 years from now, and then 2 years for them. And there you go. That's 8 years of your life that you're just doing the same exact thing. Like, really break it down into smaller chunks. And imagine if you could just shift one thing. Imagine if like you decided, and it's something that I'm talking about because I'm starting to get very focused and I've been preparing myself, is to get like more healthy, is to get healthier, right? And just eating better, working out more consistently, and all that good stuff. And what's interesting is like, for how long have I been talking about this? And what I realized is that if I could just start to do this one thing, and I'm not going to focus on the next 8 years, I'm going to focus on like the next week, the next month, whatever it might be. And I'm going to commit to small goals. And then hopefully over time, I'll be able to take those goals and to build it bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then all of a sudden I look back, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, you've been doing this for so long. It's like, even like these podcasts that I've been putting out, it didn't just happen overnight. It's like over 200 podcasts. And that doesn't include like all the lives and all the events that I've done. It's like close to like, it's probably over 300 by now. And what we have to realize is that didn't happen overnight. And I needed to put time in, and I needed to take that effort to really make sure that those things were happening. And it was that discipline of not freaking myself out, but also being disciplined enough to say, hey, you know what? This is the time we got to do it. And guess what? There were times that I missed it, and times that I was annoyed that I missed it. But now I could look back and say, you know what? I've done X amount. That's pretty sweet. And it's, on the one hand, how can I get better to make sure that I don't miss more? And on the other hand, it's okay, how can I pat myself on the back? And I think we so easily beat ourselves up. And because of that, we don't allow ourselves to have that growth. And that is something that I think is one of the things that happens a lot nowadays, that people think that they're supposed to be somewhere else. And because they're not learning from it, they end up beating themselves up because they're not documenting it. They don't allow themselves to be able to learn those lessons. And those lessons repeat themselves. I'm telling you, they will keep coming up and coming up until you deal with it. They're going to come up in this area. They're going to come up in that area, wherever they're going to be there. And that is what we need to figure out. We need to understand, okay, what is it that I can do? How is it that I'm supposed to take certain opportunities right now to allow myself to take these actions? Because for so many people, they get so stuck. They get stuck in their head. They don't allow themselves to move forward. Okay, so that's lesson number 2. The third thing I want to talk about when it comes to just understanding ourselves and knowing ourselves is that as much as we want to be able to, just like read our brains and like to download it and just have somebody else like figure it out for us, we have to get very curious of why we do certain things. And I think that if we come with curiosity, that could be something that could be really helpful. You see, because we get so judgmental on ourselves, and because we're constantly thinking that our expectation of ourselves is a lot higher than it maybe should be, we end up just keeping ourselves down. And there's a curiosity and there's a belief within ourselves that we should have to allow ourselves to continue to succeed. So when it does come to certain areas of our life, what is it that we can start to do to move forward? What is it that we can start to do to allow ourselves to become more successful at what it is that we want to be doing? And that is something that could be extremely beneficial when it comes to, when it comes to learning. Because if we can just start to be more curious, then we're not going to be as judgmental, and we're going to be able to take those lessons with us. And for a lot of us, if we can just be a little bit nicer to ourselves, that could be something that could shift so much. And it could be a real game changer. So we need to ask ourselves all these types of questions and really try to figure out what is it that we're looking to do. Because on the one hand, if we're not going to be able to know where we are, like I said earlier, we're not going to be able to know where we're going. We're going to only continuously beat ourselves up. And we're not going to allow ourselves to promote ourselves and allow ourselves to grow and take it to the next level. And that is something that is so sad. So the question is, like, what are you going to do? How is it that you're going to find out what's going to take you to the next level? And it's going to be tough. Like, it's going to be tough because it's like the hard work. This is like the honest work, because nobody likes to be told, oh, by the way, you think you should be in like the top class, but really you're in the middle class. Right? Because for whatever reason, we want to be able to have this status of like, we're better. But at the end of the day, like, where we are, that should be like the thing that we should be like proud of. That would be the thing of like, okay, this is how I'm going to get better. I remember there were times in my life where like, for example, this school example, where I wanted to be in the higher class because there was like a status involved. I didn't deserve to be in the higher class, but I would like try to force myself into the higher class because I needed to be in the higher class. And I wasn't doing well in the higher class, and so many things just went over my head. And if I would have been smarter about it, if I would have been like playing this for the longer games, like, let me go to the lower track, let me be able to learn things, learn the pieces that I'm missing, and that's going to help me be able to move faster later on, as opposed to constantly being moved behind. I remember this literally happened when I was in college. I was in one college, and I took an accounting class, and I had zero idea what was going on. It was like accounting 101. So it's like the basics of accounting, and I had no idea what was flying. I missed I think because I missed like the first 2 weeks, and we spoke about debits and credits. And if you know accounting, that's literally like the first thing you learn. And literally for the next 3 years of college, I had no idea how debits and credits worked. And when I switched colleges, because I switched in the middle, and um, I was in my 102 class, so my accounting 102 class. I had like this opportunity. Do I just stay back one semester in accounting to really make sure I get a good education, because the college that I went had a really great track for their accounting, or do I just continuously move forward to try to like make it up and try to learn it on my own? And I decided the second. I decided, you know what? Let me just stick it out. I'll figure it out. Somebody will tutor me, whatever it was. And literally for the rest of my accounting track, I had zero idea, like a real grasp on what a debit and a credit was. And that was something that was so unfortunate, because if I would have just taken that semester off, looking back, like, would have things have been different? Would I have done better in class? I mean, not that I wanted to be an accountant, but I wanted to be able to have those basic ideas. But it could have been. And I think for a lot of us, we do that to ourselves. We put ourselves in a certain status. It's like, I assume that, no, and the other thing is, like, we think that we should be good. Like, one of the things I'm trying to do with our YouTube channel, and I don't know where I'm in this journey when you're listening to this, we just hit 770 subscribers, which is very exciting. Actually, it's at 771 today, which is sweet. But one of the things that I'm trying to say and be humble about is, like, I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to figure out why. What can I do in? And we're back. All right. Sorry, I think I lost everybody there. But what we have to try to figure out is, like, what is it that we can start to do in our own lives to make these things happen? Because on the one hand, yes, it's scary. On the other hand, it's the way we're going to grow. It's the way we're going to become somebody. And if we don't become somebody, if we don't learn, then all that's going to happen is that we're just going to constantly mess up. So ask yourself, how can I become somebody? What is it that I can start to do to allow myself to make those things happen in my life, to be able to grow, to learn myself? Because at the end of the day, it's about you. It's about you becoming that person. It's about you really understanding yourself and really allowing yourself to make certain things happen in your life. And if we can start to do that, then I'm telling you, things can be so different. We have the ability to be so much more successful. And that is something that can be so powerful with us. So let me know what questions you have down below. If you have any specific topics you want me to cover, feel free to reach out. We'll see everybody on the next one.